everyone, Joe March here, aka Sorcerer, and today we're doing something different. For those of you who are fans of my silly content, and for those of you who are fans of my analytical content, this video may not be for you. But for those of you who are fans of my spiritual journey and seeing where I've gone, and who are fans of interpreting metaphor, this might be right up your alley. In fact, I think I'll add this to the Sorcerer 2.0 playlist because this feels like something that should go there. Most of you know that I practice journeying, which is a process of going deep within the self, in the subconscious, in order to better understand the self. And a lot of that comes out as metaphor. I also practice what some people would call channeling, where you call upon some kind of a deity and you integrate it with the subconscious self in order to have that deity speak through you. I don't necessarily believe that that has any real divinity to it, more than it's just an exercise to understand certain aspects of the self. But I also do have a belief in something that I would call the source or the all, and this interconnectedness between us all. So there is a little bit of a gray area there in between how much of that I think is the self and how much of that I think is the grander all. Anyway, a few weeks ago I thought, what if I was to channel Tiamat, which is my main gateway deity, I guess you could call it, and ask Tiamat through me to dictate a sort of Bible, just for fucking fun. And I knew that what would come out would be some kind of amalgamation of my own beliefs as seen by my subconscious, and what I wanted to make sure to do in this process is not interfere with that with my own analytical mind the way that I normally do, so there is no analysis of the metaphor. So what I wrote was just exactly what happened, what was interpreted, what was seen, with no analysis after the fact. So, again, if you're someone who likes whenever I break down what the analysis of something was, I didn't do that this one. This one, it's up to you guys to figure out what any of this really means, if it really means anything at all. But again, this was kind of just for fun. But once I sat down and started typing what was coming, the thing that came out was extremely interesting to me, and I thought it might be extremely interesting to you as well. Once again, don't view any of this as anything other than the mad ramblings that happened when I did this experiment. So without further ado, I'd like to read to you something that I've been calling Veritas Tiamat, the Book of Tiamat. This intro at the top is something that I added after the fact. I thought it was important to mention in case ever coming back to read this. Veritas Tiamat, the Book of Tiamat. A channeled understanding of existence and reality as observed through interaction between Joseph March and Tiamat in trance and journey work. Understand this is as interpreted, not to be taken as definitive. Much of what was expressed may be metaphorical in nature. So let's begin. The origin. The first drop of life fell from the blackness as a tear from the infinite, a bubble of lights and swirls amid a backdrop of silent dark. Space, as we know it today, is not as empty and dark as the place from which it originated. Yet, this place is not without motion. It churns and gnashes against itself like a whirling pool of water, blending and separating in chaotic yet marvelous ways. It is from this womb of creation that all things which exist today were born. The Great Mother is that very womb, and unlike the dualistic natural world we live in, the Great Mother creates without need for a partner. She also destroys in order to transform her creation into something new, something fresh. And so, the very forces of chaos and order are actually one force, the force of infinite renewal, the process of life, death, and rebirth. This Great Mother is the source of all existence, the creator, the grand architect. Yet, she is also her creation, for what she created everything from was herself. As such, one may think of her as the all, while others may think of her as God. It is important to note, however, that she is only a she in so much as we relate her to a great womb. She is neither male nor female. In truth, we are all the Great Mother, and she is us. She is every tree, every rock, every bird, every star. She is the sum of everything and everyone, and it is for this reason she is hard to comprehend. She does not act on our behalf or against us. She does not concern herself with our wants and desires. She has created all that is in her image, a cycle of continuous transformation, growing in complexity with time. She has made us adaptable, so that we may help ourselves, for after all, we are each her. Still, each of her creations is unique, and our vying for our own will is part of the process of her understanding herself. She is something more akin to nature, a force that welcomes parts of itself to consume other parts for survival, and that observes transformation over time to adapt and change alongside a consistently changing environment. For this reason, many who do not understand see her as chaos. Those who do understand see her as balance. She is more correctly referred to as eternity, for she is everything that is, was, and ever will be. Yet she concentrates, as we do, on the now. To live as she lives is to be present in the now. It is the only path to power, the only way to know the self. And so, the Great Mother put everything we know into motion, and then left it to her creation to change within itself, observing to see what we would become, never intervening without being directly asked by us. For when we ask for her intervention, we speak truthfully to ourselves. We beckon ourselves to change. The creation. What we are and what we exist as part of is known as the creation. It is neither separate from the Great Mother, nor is she present as an individual within it. She is everything, no more, no less. To attempt to contact her is to attempt to contact eternity. You can see her everywhere, even within yourself, but you cannot grasp the fullness of her without years of meditation on the concept. Even once you have the epiphany, which is the enlightenment of the all, where you are able to see how everything is connected and experience yourself as a part of the greater whole, you will still not get the sense that the all is an individual in the way that we have the capability to be. She is always everything, and so attempting to understand her double as methods to expand the self into recognizing the eternity as what we are as well. We can understand what it is to be eternity, but return to the default of being individuals when not concentrating on that wholeness. This is how it is supposed to be. If we were eternity and not individuals, we would be her. We would cease to exist separately from the Great Mother. Every rock and tree is part of the all, yet exists on its own. Every planet, every star, every galaxy is part of an infinitely large, interconnected tapestry, but is also a unique individual. Every cell in our body is its own unique cell, even though, to us, they are a part of us. These layers of connectedness and individuality are natural parts of the creation and are the states in which those that are part of the creation are supposed to exist within. The idea that the creation is meant to evolve into the all one day is a misunderstanding of the creation, for no creation would have been necessary if that was the end goal. We each play our part, and that part is why we exist. Growth and changing is natural to us, and helps us to carve a path to our own individual enlightenment. But ultimately, from the all's perspective, we are like the flowing water particles moving along its swirling ocean. It cannot exist without us. We cannot exist without it. And yet, our individuality has little importance to it. Our actions are what interests the Great Mother, for when we act and others act in reaction to us, we push the potential for changing the whole. It is the same when the earth quakes and the tornado touches down, when one animal overconsumes another, and when an animal is not thinned enough. The Great Mother changes in accordance with the changes in the universe, no matter how big or small, and those changes correspond to her own transformation. She does not care if the wicked overcome the righteous, or the altruistic have greater numbers than the individualistic. These are affairs for mortals. These are battles that we care about, that we must decide how to fight and what is best. To her, the natural transformation will occur regardless of our struggles, and however we end up was the way we had to become in the end. We fight for our beliefs because we wish to shape the future of our kind, and how our kind interacts with the larger eternity. If we win, moving our kind closer to our ideals, we also move reality in that direction. If we lose, reality shifts another direction. She is indifferent to this, changing in accordance either way. The gods. Just as we are pieces of the Great Mother, making up the fullness of what she is, the gods are the same. They represent different lenses through which to get to know the Great Mother. As such, individuals like us can come to better understand her through interactions with them, or at least can come to better understand certain aspects of her. Those gods that represent universal forces, things beyond human control that existed before us, are often referred to as primordials, while those who represent human action were traditionally called deities or gods. Ares, for example, was the god of war, a human action. Tiamat, on the other hand, was the primordial sea serpent of chaos, representing the dangers of the uncivilized places. Interactions between these beings in myth are actually metaphorical representations of the transformations undertaken by the Great Mother. When Marduk, god of kings, defeats Tiamat, primordial of chaos, the story is one of kings and their followers building civilizations in which the people are separated from the chaos of the wilds around them. While Tiamat is killed and split to become the very land upon which we live in the story, in reality these gods are never killed. They simply transform over time as the Great Mother does herself. Their stories are allegories used to understand the world as it is, or in these cases, as it was when the stories originated. Many modern religions no longer refer to these representations of aspects of the Great Mother as gods. They are sometimes demons or angels now, depending on if their virtues and values are looked upon as favorable or not. Yet, all of them exist within each being who is part of the creation. There is a Marduk and a Tiamat in every one of us, and the outcome of their battle within us may be different from person to person. When magicians and shamans speak to the gods, they are actually speaking to the version of these gods within themselves. Thus, they are speaking to a specific representation, to a specific aspect of the Great Mother that exists within them. For this reason, interactions for one person with a god of war may be different from interactions for another person. These gods represent reflections of ourselves as much as they reflect the Great Mother. How helpful they are also depends upon the individual. Some practitioners may spend their entire life speaking to many gods to try to get a broad understanding of the Great Mother. Others find one god or a few they resonate strongly with and focus attention on those, becoming more like those gods in the process. Both methods are viable ways of gaining understanding of both the Great Mother and the Self. Both methods lead to interaction with and connection to the All. However, this practice is not required of humans or any other part of the creation. It is simply there for those who seek it. If those who follow these practices grow in numbers, it will be considered a normal part of society for its time. If they dwindle, it will be seen as fringe. It is, in reality, simply a choice made by individuals. The Great Mother cares not if you seek to know her or not. The author and channeler of this work is one who works almost exclusively with Tiamat, so those who read should understand that these proclamations, while as accurate to their channeling as possible, are written from the vantage point of the aspect of the Great Mother seen through that particular lens, and as such, one size may not fit all. Tiamat. It is easy to confuse Tiamat herself for the Great Mother, as she has many things in common mythologically. She is an entity of chaos, who was the creator of the human-like gods. She was represented by the abyss, which in the past was likened to the sea, but many modern followers of hers liken it more to the void. And she became the very earth upon which we stand, a Mother Earth-like figure. To the people of her time, she represented the chaotic harshness of the primordial world before civilization. They saw her as something humanity needed to overcome, viewing the natural world as dangerous and full of monsters. In modern times, practitioners who follow Tiamat view her more sympathetically. She is often compared to dark feminine goddesses like Kali, Hecate, and the Morgan. In a modern world, where patriarchal forces have stripped most of the natural world, we can see that she was the other side of a coin that should have been kept in balance, not overcome. Learning from Tiamat is a direct path to learning about the Great Mother and finding connection with her, but Tiamat herself is darker than the Great Mother. She is, in many ways, a woman scorned. She is emotionally involved in the world and the people who walk upon it. She, unlike the Great Mother, does care about how we treat each other and how we interact with nature. She can be extremely dangerous to work with because her truths are harsh, but for those who make a strong connection with her, she can become very loving. In fact, Tiamat is very passionate with her followers and will become extremely entrenched in their lives if they agree to allow her to merge with them. However, it is important to note that she warns that merging with her is also dangerous. Many who do become insane, lost to the madness within, if they are unable to accept and embrace her harsh truths. It is, in a way, a long test, which may never truly end, to prove oneself adaptable enough to survive the relationships she brings. She does not wish to rule over her followers. In fact, the word followers is not a good representation of the relationship. She wishes to help them self-actualize and become equals in her eyes. She also does not direct them on how to behave, only asking that they consider alternatives to their ways of thinking to truly discover what they believe. It is her goal that one know the self, fully, free of self-deception, and know the world as well. Doing this will help the follower to know her. On some occasions, and definitely in the case of the author and channeler of this work, a practitioner may work with Tiamat in the guise of other gods. It is unclear if these other gods are also Tiamat, if they are connected in some way to Tiamat, or if they are separate but loyal to Tiamat, but they seem to work as one. It is also unclear if Tiamat is the truest representation of who this shape-changing dark goddess really is, but she is absolutely a path to the same gnosis. The teacher. Within each of us is a God self. Some call it the subconscious self, some the holy guardian angel, some a divine muse. This thing that exists is us, but also not. It is our individual sliver of godhood, and it can take on the form of any of the gods within us. When we talk to a god in practice, we are actually talking to this God self, connected to the Great Mother, channeling the specific aspect and giving it form. So we are talking to ourselves, the part of ourselves that is the Great Mother, but giving it a God form to speak as. When not using it in this way, the God self has its own form, a sort of amalgamation of all our understandings of God or the gods and ourselves. Often, for reasons unknown, its gender is the opposite of the one we identify as. And it will also take on any traits about ourselves which we push away and ignore, unless we've gone through the proper work to integrate those traits with self. The God self is simultaneously a part of us and capable of speaking to us like an individual. For this reason, many mistake it for being some form of guide or teacher from the spirit world instead of being a part of ourselves. But when it is not concentrated on to speak to, it goes back to being a part of us. If we have not worked through our traumas and come to terms with ourselves, this God self will become like a dark shadow, gnawing at us to get us to do what we ignore. If, however, we work towards self-acceptance and are able to find true self-love, the God self integrates with us and can be used as a vessel to speak to the gods. When gods are channeled through this self, it is like speaking to them face to face, and in this case, it really does become like a conversation with a teacher. Also, remnants of the gods remain part of this self when it is used in this way, slowly changing the practitioner to be more like the gods they work with. In order for the God self to become a true teacher, however, a pact must be made with a god to have it merge with you. Doing so permanently changes the God self to make it partially a version of the god the practitioner has chosen to work with. Once this happens, the god is always active within you, becoming a new version of that god, which is a combining of its personality and that of your God self. This new being is often lovingly referred to as the teacher when this is done in a healthy, loving way. Once a God self has become a teacher, the practitioner will rarely, if ever, need to call on the original god anymore. The teacher can be called for all requests that would normally go to the god, and will become the primary contact for the practitioner. The practitioner over time will also become more and more like the god they made this deal with, and it is their God self, their own subconscious sliver of God, that they transformed. This does not mean that the practitioner will gain godlike powers, for those are a misunderstanding of what gods really are, but does mean they will begin to view reality in a way that parallels the god they merged with. The teacher can further change if the god the practitioner works with helps them connect to the Great Mother. This will make the God self a conduit for the energy of reality and will change it into its own unique god, flavored by the gods that came before. It will also grant the practitioner the ability to understand reality in a way that is beyond the self while maintaining their individuality. Beyond that point, the practitioner will work exclusively with their teacher, no longer needing to reach out to other gods, able to call upon the Great Mother directly if needed. Though the teacher is a representation of themselves, many will choose to call it by the name of the god it merged with, finding it hard to conceptualize it for what it really is. This is why some people's personal god is different yet similar to a specific mythological one. The relationship between the teacher and self will then become one of continued evolution, both seeing advancement of each other as beneficial. The point will be further refinement and understanding of the self, as well as further understanding and acceptance of the all. For the author and channeler of this work, this also led to the development of 7 steps to be meditated on, representing the personal continuous self-actualization process. Adapt as needed to survive, but avoid causing harm to others in the process. Be aware of your desires and find healthy outlets for them. Recognize that order is established through responsibility, not through power. Embrace your emotions and accept them for what they are. Allow yourself to love. Speak only truth, most especially to the self. Avoid self-delusion and deception. Understand the wholeness of who you are. Embrace the wholeness of the all. Life is full of opportunities for self-actualization and transformation. A teacher who is merged with Tiamat will seek to bring the student through such transformation regularly. And as you can see, that is the end. So hopefully you found that interesting. That's what happens when I just dump whatever's in my subconscious mind onto the page about what it believes is how all of this works. And I say that because if you're anyone who practices, you can do all the analysis you want when you're not in that mode where you're integrated with the self, with the subconscious, about what you think is really going on. But when you're going deep in, you just have to accept what's happening as if it's real. You no longer question how much is metaphor or not in those moments, and it feels more like this, more like what is written here. So if you were ever interested in what it's like to follow me down into my headspace about how it feels to do journeying and channeling and all that sort of things, and what type of weird hierarchy of God stuff is going on deep within my subconscious, this should have explained all that to you. If you want to follow this, that's your own, do at your own risk, because this is not something that's like tried and true, tested truth. This is just how this feels to me. I hope that explained everything. I hope you enjoyed it if you stuck around. I want to thank you for watching and listening, and until next time, safe travels.